Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jennifer Beatty Yen. I'm the CEO of the Film Lab. And this fall, the Film Lab is launching a powerful new interview series spotlighting women leading the charge in film and TV. In elevating women in entertainment, top industry insiders share unfiltered insights. The interview series is free on our YouTube channel at Film Lab Inc. Today, we're thrilled to have the actress, writer, and singer Erin Quill joining us. Erin was an original member of the cast of the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical Avenue Q. All right, well, I kind of want to start with the hard stuff. We only have like four
Okay.
four topics, but I thought this was particularly relevant given what we were talking about before we started the interview. So,
Mhm.
particularly now, there's an idea that women are given by society, which is an incorrect idea, that we are competitors with one another always. The idea there can
Right.
be only one woman in the room and the default is for men. And I'm curious how we can retrain ourselves to see one another as collaborators and not competitors, to raise one another up, particularly in the entertainment industry, which can be very cutthroat
Um,
and competitive and can be very much a good old boys network.
yeah. Well, I think the fallacy that we're all living in Highlander and there can be only one is because of scarcity. Because years ago, scarcity happened and there was only like, one female partner in a movie with 25 men, right? And then they allowed us to have like two parts. So we've been inching our way towards representation, both as women, and then if you put the cross pollination on it of if you happen to be a minority or you happen to be some other classification, like you have a disability or something, it is very rare that the majority stakeholder in entertainment is not a white male. That's the default. It's always been the default. And it's interesting, no matter what group the man in charge identifies with or how they identify, they still have the same requisite idea of what is appropriate representation for females. And so it doesn't matter if the executive on the film happens to be a member of the LGBTQIA. It doesn't matter if they are a person of color. Their attitude towards females is generally the same, which is like a little goes a long way. And in response to that, we have taken on that scarcity, and sometimes we do slam down on a colleague because they seem to be getting more opportunities or more than their fair share of opportunities. And I think when we see one another, instead of seeing one another as female colleagues and we see each other as competitive, that's when communication breaks down. That's when uh, scarcity becomes the metric that we judge women by. And that can be a very lonely place. And I've always said, if you can go and make a friend, that's a much more effective way to go and live your life and be in the world than if you go in with the thought that everybody's against you and everybody's trying to get me and I'm going to lose this job and all that kind of stuff. That if you can't get a job, make a friend.
On the
Yeah.
topic of jobs, so I know you do voiceover work, right? Some
Yeah.
voiceover work, yeah. So there's an entity called Building Doors, and they put out some data recently that was really interesting to me. I'm just reading from it. So they found that voiceover work opportunities have declined for women over the past year, and that women are now primarily cast for only female-driven products as opposed to neutral products like a car, whereas men are cast for both the male-driven and the neutral. And obviously, voiceover is just one part of the much larger entertainment media structure, but similar concerns have been raised in other areas, and then we can get into the multi-hyphenates and race and everything else. But as an artist, what are your thoughts on the issue?
What companies who hire voiceover actors are doing is responding to the market. So in a way, politics kind of is the beginning and the ending of a lot of conversations, right? We had a fully qualified female running for president who was biracial and beyond qualified, possibly next to she and Hillary Clinton were the most qualified people to ever run for office. And each time America has rejected them. And each time the conversation about misogyny gets lost. Now, what advertisers do is they respond to that misogyny. They're like, you know what? People aren't buying a woman. They're not buying a woman as president of the United States. Why do we think they would buy our product? You know, if it's a female voice. So they tend to gravitate towards male voices as the default, as the neutral. So it's about also, it's not just about voiceover itself. It's about what does America actually believe? And America believes in men. I used to work in advertising, and I'll never forget going through the casting tapes with executives from an advertising agency in New York, big advertising agency. And they said to me, "Oh, we're not hiring that one." And it was a female actress. And I said, "Why not? She's great." And they said, "Oh, well, she looks like my ex-girlfriend."
Oh,
And I was like, "Yeah, but she doesn't know that." And he goes, "Well, I know it, and I'm not going to sit all day on set with somebody that looks like my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend." It's at the end of the day, everything kind of boils down to misogyny and self-hatred of and women who do a little bit self-hate and how they yeah, can you see Liam coming in the back?
oh, that's okay. Hey, Liam.
Liam, you want to come in? You're blurry. They
This is the
can't see
very
you unless you
talented
come close.
voiceover actor. Hey, how are you?
Uh, how are you? Do you say good? Okay, can I do my interview now? Yes. Yeah. I
And
think
it's frustrating to even ask the question because it's kind of like in the context of sexual assault, everybody's like, well, women need to do X, Y, and Z. And I sort of feel like women don't need to do anything. It should be on the men to just not assault us. That would be really nice. So it's a frustrating question to ask, but at the same time, I know people are going to be watching this who are dying to get into the industry, who are so excited. And what do you tell them?
I tell them hold on to their enthusiasm. I think enthusiasm is always what saves you in those dark moments. I do think things are changing very slowly, but change has always happened very slowly. And I can say that from the depth of experience. My grandmother was a concert pianist. My mother was a ballet dancer in Australia. She was Chinese Australian, and she couldn't get into the main companies because she wasn't white. So and then I had the pleasure of taking her to see a live broadcast of the Royal Ballet. She was an advanced teacher in the Royal Ballet system, and she watched these Asian dancers dancing the feature roles in whatever ballet we saw. I can't remember. And she said to me, that never would have happened in my day. So I understand the frustration of wanting it so badly to be better. But what you have to hold on to is that change doesn't happen like that. That's the one thing. The second thing is, you have to create your own, you have to create the reality you want to see. So if you're a person of color, or you're a woman, or however or a female identifying person at all, make your own projects, which is like really easy to say, but also it's much easier to do now than it ever has been before. So now, even if you wanted to buy a more substantial camera than an iPhone, although iPhones are very good and feature films have been made on iPhones, you can buy a very nice digital camera for like maybe $2,000 and then hire a friend to do lights and you can create your own. I mean, that is what YouTube is. That is what TikTok is. That's what influencers are.
Yeah.
Influencers are. They're making their own thing. And I ultimately what you find is like a lot of times you get hired because of who you are and not necessarily what the part is.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, bouncing off that kind of and thinking about the industry right now and how much in flux it is, just in terms we've got our political landscape, we've got AI stuff going on, we've got streaming shifts, we've got all this stuff going on. If you had to
Mm-hmm.
sort of boil down some practical advice to those who are jumping into the industry right now, what would you tell them to do?
I would tell them to invest in themselves and their training. And by that, I don't necessarily mean you have to go to a fancy school. And by the way, I did go to a fancy school. So it's not the fancy school that makes it for you. But if you invest in yourself, like figure out if you, for example, are funny, funny goes a long way in entertainment because a lot of people can just do lines. But if you're funny, that's something else entirely. So are you going to come up with like one person comedic sketches where you play all the different parts, like so many people do on TikTok in the early days? Are you going to, do something as simple as unboxing a new toy every day and grow it into a multi-million dollar industry just because you're enthusiastic about this toy? Are you like things that you can do on your own to enhance your own, and I hate this word, I hate it, brand. And I don't mean just video stuff. I think write your own ideas. Figure out how to get your projects off the ground. My blog became super successful because I had my own point of view and I wrote it down and I just posted it and I didn't think anybody would read it. And then 25,000 clicks later, in 2 days, all of a sudden I was fielding calls from like news organizations and like fellow people who had just always considered me an actor, but now thought of me more as a journalist. And now I had was fielding calls from other countries. Would you please write about this issue over here? Because like your point of view is something that we desperately need because not everybody writes about representation with a sense of humor. And to me, representation is funny, honestly, because it's so clear that we are an integrated world and an integrated population. And yet, when it comes to our entertainment, even now, it's very binary.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those that don't know, for anybody that's been living under a rock or is just very young, can you tell people what your blog is and how they can access?
Oh, sure. It's on the World Wide Web, kids. It's called Fairy Princess Diaries.
All right. Last question. What is your favorite of all of your many, many, many accomplishments in the entertainment industry? What is your favorite and why? Sorry, it's an impossible question.
Oh my God, that's what is impossible. What? Okay, this is like totally. It's so this is not even related to performing. So I was in the Natural History Museum with my son, and there was a lecture being given by these three graphic artists, and I sat in on it while he wandered around and saw the dinosaurs. And I took a picture and I posted it on Instagram, and I was like, "This is really cool. These are these writers. If you get a chance to see them speak, you should see them speak." Well, one of the writers reached out to me, and he was like, "Who are you? What do you do?" Like that, and it turned out that he was creating a graphic novel for to aid in Puerto Rican hurricane relief efforts. And he was like, "Do you know any Latinx actors? Because we do have Rosario Dawson, but we need XYZ." So I did happen to have so I put them in touch with like Wilson Cruz and Philip Anthony Rodriguez. And then he said to me, "Hey, Erin, you're so fun." He goes, La Boriqueña, which is his lead character that he inks and does. He goes, "La Kenya's best friend is mixed Asian and Puerto Rican." And I was, or Asian and she's Chinese and Dominican. And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Would you be interested in writing a story for her best friend Lala?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And so I wrote the story with a little guy. I was like, "Okay, you just have to kind of like make sure I know what I'm doing." I wrote the story and then it was inked by Marvel artists and colored by Marvel art. Like it is I always say this is the coolest thing I've ever done. I've never done it again, but it was so unbelievably fulfilling to be like, here's something that's like aside from showbiz that I kind of did. Um, but yeah, it was, so Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez is the writer, and his character is called Labra Kenya. And writing that once is called Lala's Family Dinner. And I got a couple of like, well, she had to come in the house but take off her shoes, like that. Like I had like all these different like kind of mixed, like you came to dinner and you didn't bring oranges. Like it was a whole thing, and or like her aunt takes them from her and is like, "Oh, oranges, so original," like all those kind of like stupid, like the people who are mixed, we know the shit. It's like you're never gonna be what they want you to be, right? So I thought that story was the coolest thing I've ever done. So that yeah, I've had a lot of fun along the way. But it can break your heart, but it's also cool.
Well, thank you so much for being with us and thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and your experiences. It's greatly
So
appreciated.
much wisdom. So much wisdom. Well, thank you for asking. And I appreciate you, Jen. I love you. And like, we've never competed.
Never. You've always helped
You and
me.
I have never competed, not once.
Collaborators, collaborators.
Exactly. Always collaboration, never competition.